So I do worry about that. And it is, again, that's part of the battle, the soul of the cannabis industry that's on right now.
Andrew DeAngelo co-founded Harborside Health Center, one of America's most well-known cannabis companies.
Legalization enables us to have lab-tested cannabis that we know where it comes from, and we know who makes it, and we know why.
Along with his brother Steve DeAngelo, Andrew has helped pave the way for the current legal cannabis sector.
Rule of law should be driven by what's morally right as much as possible. So
nowadays, he is dedicated to liberating and giving opportunities to all individuals incarcerated on cannabis charges.
I've been locked up for weed. My brother's been locked up for weed. Our friends, our family, people we know have been killed even over this. And it's a terrible, terrible, terrible fate. And it's mostly suffered by poor folks or folks that can't bribe or.
It is this sense of justice and the courage to fight for what is right which makes Andrew DeAngelo our Person of the Month.
Okay, again, Andrew DeAngelo, thank you so much for joining Cannabis World Journals today. It is a pleasure to have you here. How are you feeling today?
Well, it's great to be with you. I'm fantastic.
Glad to hear that. You look fantastic. You look very happy. I just, I was reading a bit about you, and of course, all of the information is out there, but I wanted to hear it from you firsthand. What was your, what was your initial history with cannabis? I mean, how did that start out?
Sure. Well, some of your readers and listeners may be familiar with my older brother, Steve DeAngelo, and Steve's about 10 years older than me. So he was my introduction to cannabis. When I was in high school, I had an injury. I was an athlete and I was injured. And so actually, we didn't know it. This was 1984, 83. So we didn't call it medical cannabis then. We just called it cannabis. But the first application for me was actually medical because I was physically injured. I was also pretty depressed, which is what happens when athletes get injured and they can't play their sport anymore. And so the cannabis really helped me with that too. And it helped me so much, I decided that I wanted to follow in my brother's footsteps and trade in cannabis and work with the plant. And so I did that the best I could at that time. And, part of what we had to do was be activists and change the laws because they were draconian and very strict in the United States at that time. And so that's what we did. And, kept trading cannabis the whole time. And then once we got things legal, we were able to have our own legal cannabis companies. The latest of which was a company called Harborside, which we exited. Harborside went public for lots of different reasons, but, and we left the company because we actually didn't want Harborside to become what it became, unfortunately. But what I do now is I'm a consultant and I work in the global cannabis industry. I also have a nonprofit called Last Prisoner Project. Our mission is to release all cannabis prisoners from prison and to expunge their records and re-enter them into society. And I also have a column in Forbes. I do some writing and some speaking at all the major conferences here in the United States. And so that's what I'm up to these days for the most part. And, really just spreading the gospel of cannabis and also helping people build their businesses.
Thank you for that answer. When you say spreading the gospel of cannabis, what exactly do you mean by that? I mean, what do you think the message, what do you think people need to know about cannabis? What should the message be?
Well, it's a very simple message. Cannabis is good, not bad. That's the first thing I think people need to know about cannabis as a plant, as a compound, as a substance. It's a good thing for society. It's a good thing for the planet. It's a good thing for people. It's a good thing for our bodies. So I think there's a lot of different perspectives on cannabis. I'm in I believe all use is medical, basically, and that the wellness applications of cannabis are going to be the primary reason why people take cannabis as an intoxicant. People want to have fun and relax too. And so I think that'll be another major reason people consume cannabis on a much wider scale than we have today, or certainly when I started 30 some years ago. So, you know, I think that's kind of my approach to it. And I think that people need to know that this is a medicine, and it's also a wonderful product for industrial applications, everything from protein powder to, you know, graphene that you put in your cell phone, can all be made from hemp and cannabis. Hemp and cannabis are the same plant. They're not any different. There's a lot of misconceptions about that too, but it's just one really useful plant that has lots of different strains and species within the species. and so there's just lots of things we can do with this particular plant, just like other plants that we use, that we get a lot out of, whether it be, you know, grapes and hops and or cotton and, you know, medicinal herbs that aren't cannabis, like eucalyptus or valerian root or any number of other things.
Thank you so much for that answer. Now, going back a little bit to what you were saying, of course, you mentioned two different, or not so different sides, but two sides that the cannabis industry had, which is, of course, the medicinal side, you know, the patients who have to access cannabis for health reasons. And then there is the adult use side, which, you know, accesses cannabis because, you know, for any reason, just because, you know, they enjoy the plant. When we talk about the industry as a whole, do you believe it's important to segregate these two if we want the industry to move forward? Or should we talk about, you know, cannabis as a plant in general?
Yeah, I don't think we need to separate or segregate those two things, but I think we'll probably have to segregate those two things just to, as a practical matter of ending prohibition more quickly and making communities feel safe about having this. People feel a lot safer with quote unquote medical cannabis than they do with quote unquote adult use cannabis, even though it's really an absurd viewpoint, because cannabis is all around us. There are people taking cannabis right now in the underground market all around you. Your community's got it in it. Your child's school has it in it. It's already there. So it's kind of naive to think that it's not there. What we're talking about is not whether it's there or not, but how it's going to be there. So legalization enables us to have lab tested cannabis that we know where it comes from, and we know who makes it, and we know why, and we can present that to the world in a open way under the bright lights of mainstream commerce, and not hidden in the shadows and underground. It's not so much as cannabis in your community. Yeah, it is. It's already there. The question is, do you want to see how it's being made and distributed, or do you want to be in the dark about that?
That is actually a great point. Now, you've seen, of course, being so many years in the industry, the evolution, and you did at some point said that you didn't like, you know, one of the creation, for example, of Harborside, what it became. And you know, I wanted to ask you, not only on that project in particular, but I wanted to ask you, like, in the industry in general, what do you think of the transformation? It's come a long way, but I mean, has it turned out to be what you and other people like you set out for it to be? Or is it even close to it?
Well, it's still too early to tell. There's still plenty of battles to be fought, and depending on who wins those battles will determine whether or not what we envision becomes a reality. Right now, what we envision is not becoming a reality. Capitalism is sort of doing its thing right now with the cannabis industry. That would be okay if the people, the legacy folks and the underground folks like me and my brother who worked with this plant for so long and got busted and went to jail, if we had an opportunity to participate in the legal industry. That's not the case right now in most of the legal markets, pretty much everywhere in the United States, in particular, California in particular. So we have to correct that problem that we are encountering right now in legalization. I like to say the battle for the soul of the cannabis industry is on right now. I think that when we look at Canada, Canada's got some interesting lessons for us. Canada's federally legal, so they don't have this problem like we do in the United States where the feds have it illegal, but the states have it legal. It's all federally legal there. Their problem is the corporate cannabis folks that displaced the legacy folks didn't do a very good job. And they literally have billions of grams, maybe not billions, but hundreds of millions of grams of cannabis they have to destroy, that no one wants to buy, that they can't sell. And then the craft cannabis that is available in the legal market, people are scooping up and paying more for it. And the craft producers, even though they're vastly outnumbered, are getting more market share in Canada than the legal producers right now. So I'm hopeful that a similar thing can happen here too. Not to say that I don't want corporate cannabis in the mix, I certainly do, because we can't get cannabis into the medicine shelf of everybody on earth without scale. And so we have to have elements of scale. We also have to have elements of craft. And somehow we have to create what I call ecosystem instead of an industry. And if we can do that, where you have small, medium, and large, not just for-profit companies, but not for-profit entities, then I think we can build an industry that is not only something we can be more proud of from a legacy standpoint, but also something that's more ecologically sound and sustainable. The carbon footprint for the legal cannabis right now is terrible. And so I want to correct that. A lot of people want to correct that. And so, you know, that's another reason to have this ecosystem, is that it'll be more ecologically sustainable. If the same thing's going to happen with widgets, I mean, you're not going to be able to make a widget in China, ship it all the way across the earth and sell it. There's too much carbon in that cycle that's being released. And so this is sort of something that humanity's got to face overall. It's my vision and hope that cannabis will help lead the way. We're not right now, I'm sad to say, but the potential for us to do that is there because we're starting everything from scratch. If your joint has to come in a package, isn't it better for that package to be sustainable from the beginning than to have a whole bunch of unsustainable joint packaging and then have to replace it later on with sustainable? It's better to just start from from the beginning. And it's a lot cheaper ultimately to become sustainable if you start it from the beginning. And so we have that potential. And so I hope we can actualize that potential.
I think we all hope that. Thank you so much for that answer. Now, of course, you've talked about the industry that you hope to see and the different factors that have to be taken into account when shaping that industry. You do a lot of consultancy work. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and where do you play into building that industry or helping other companies and people build that industry?
Well, the fun thing about consulting is you get to concentrate on more than one company. When you own and operate a company, you have to be obsessed with that company to make it a success. Some entrepreneurs can have more than one company, like Richard Branson or, some extraordinary people, Elon Musk. But I haven't been able, me and my brother have had more than one company. I shouldn't say that, it's not fair. We have our nonprofit, I have my consulting business. So, we do more than one thing, but generally, if you own and operate a company, you're pretty obsessed with it. When you're a consultant, you can have more than one client. You have to have more than one client to make a living. And,
Exactly.
but you can't have too many, or at least I can't have too many, because I like to embed myself with the client and really build businesses from the ground up. That's what I love to do. So generally, I help people get licenses. I help them plan their businesses on paper with their pro formas. Sometimes I help them raise money. Most of the time they have their own money that they hire me with, and then we go out and we build the business once the license is in hand. And then once we cut the ribbon and opening day, I'm pretty much done at that point, and I move on to the next business. Some people want me to stick around for the first quarter or so, just to make sure the operations are happening right. But generally speaking, most entrepreneurs want to run their own business. They don't want me hanging around. And so once I teach them how to do it, we've developed the brand, we figured out how to differentiate ourselves in the market. We build the supply chain. We understand how we're going to present ourselves to customers. And then we go about doing that, executing all that vision in real time. You have to build it. And then you have to open it, and you have government officials licensing you and inspecting you, and you have investors giving you money, and there's a lot to keep track of, and that's what I'm really good at, because I did it for so long with Harborside that it now comes as second nature to me, and the real advantage, not only the experience of having Harborside is a big advantage I have, but just I've been with this plant for so long, and I understand how it works inside people's bodies so well that I can advise people on how to create that connection all the way through from seed to sale. So that's a little bit of what I do as a consultant. And it's fun to build the whole industry. I get to work all different parts of the supply chain. I'm doing consumption lounges, are sort of a new thing that's coming online now here in the United States, in certain places like Nevada and New York and California, just starting in California, certain places in California. And so that's a new model I'm learning about and executing for my clients now. And, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work too. Building any cannabis business is a lot of hard work right now in the legal market, especially just because there's so much compliance that you have to do just to survive. And I like seeing my ideas come to life. And when I help a lot of different folks, or some different folks, I can see different ideas come to life and see how they work and don't work. And most of them almost always work at this stage of my career. And so I'm having a lot of fun with it for those reasons. It's not as stressful as owning and operating your own company. But it is, I care about my clients a lot. So, when they're stressed, I'm stressed. And when they're feeling the pressure, I'm feeling the pressure. And that's kind of how it all works.
Thank you. Now, of course, you mentioned capitalism a few questions ago, of course, undeniable. Do you ever fear or wonder? I mean, the more and more involved big corporations get within, in the cannabis industry, what is going to happen to, those medium and small businesses? Is it, sometimes it feels that so the big corporations can take over, cannabis as a mainstream, and then because taxation is so heavy in the US and in most countries, then whoever doesn't have the financial muscle to match big companies, huge corporations, it just it just seems better to keep selling it in the dark and not go through those loops, those hoops that the government establishes, or the licenses, and everything that makes the legal business highly expensive. What do you think about that part? I mean, is that one of your concerns? Will the industry itself allow it, or how do you see that happen in the next years?
Well, it's a huge concern. If you're a legacy person right now in most markets in the United States, with the exception of New York, maybe, it's probably better to stay underground or in the gray market than it is to go legal. I'm very sad to say that, but that's the honest truth. So, and a lot of people are making that choice. I decided to go legal because I just couldn't stand being hunted by police anymore, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. So it was worth the sacrifices. But I earn a much lower living than I did before, and I, in some respects, don't have as good a lifestyle or as many opportunities as I did before. So that's sort of the sacrifices that need to be made, and that's just part of it. But yeah, I worry that the barriers of entry are too high, and I worry that we're not including everyone that needs to be included. So sorry, I just got to make sure I'm not missing another thing I'm supposed to do right now. No, I've got 15 minutes.
No problem.
But yeah, I'm definitely worried about. Look, we're all capitalists. We like to trade things. We like to trade cannabis. We like to make money. We're not.
We like great stuff in general.
We're not communists. But we're also not. We're not crazy. We don't want monopolies, and we don't want ugly oligarchies, and we don't want an unlevel playing field. The idea, the way it works in the legacy market and the underground market is you got to be able to compete. How do you compete? You have to get weed, and then you have to sell it, and whoever has the best weed generally sells the most of it. And it's very much a merit-based system. I mean, you do have to have good suppliers, and that can be hard to get, but that's part of the job of being, a weed trader, is you get good suppliers. So that's it's always been a merit-based playing field. If you were good at it, you made a living. If you weren't good at it, you were just a consumer. So now it's not like that. It's not. We've got people that own licenses that have a lot of big companies that aren't very good at what they do with cannabis. So that's a little off, right? We want a more level playing field so that we can have the best possible products and the best. Let capitalism do what capitalism does best, and that's compete. It's a competitive system. It's not really capitalism if it's a monopoly. That's a monopoly. Or and so and we don't enforce that. Like Amazon's this giant monopoly. No one's enforcing it or breaking it apart. I mean, it's clearly a monopoly. They own grocery stores. They own all kinds of stuff. And you know, it's clearly so the more, so I do worry about that, and it is, again, that's part of the battle, the soul of the cannabis industry that's on right now, and it's our job to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't know what to say. We have to.
Just demand, you know, exactly. You said it's our job as an industry to demand better regulations that are more in touch with reality. I'll give you an example here. As I mentioned, I'm located in Bogota, Colombia, here in South America, and this is a country.
Exciting times in Colombia.
Yeah.
Exciting times.
I mean, interesting times, at least.
Interesting times. You have a good president now with the legalization, anyway.
Well, he was actually, yeah. So he said this remark. So Colombia has had its fair history of bloodshed over drugs.
Oh, I know it well.
I know everyone. Mostly over cocaine, but of course marijuana. Till this day, and lots of many parts of the country where the government doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's still operated by illegal marijuana crops.
Yeah.
We are one of the countries, if not after Uruguay, that is completely leading the way to regulation and legalization when it comes to cannabis. It has happened pretty much overnight in the last 2 or 3 years. And of course, we have licenses in place. Now, our new president actually said that we should just legalize without the necessity of a license. That this, of course, opens a huge debate, but when you say that, it's a concern here too, and I think around the world, many people who have been victims of illegal cannabis trade or, the violence associated with illegal crops are not the ones that are now are not the ones reaping the benefits of legalization. Those happen to be Canadian, American, and Colombian companies. And those people are still out in the countryside, forgotten, and still having to deal, their own stuff illegally with everything that, that implies. So when you say it is our responsibility to demand, better regulation and the government to not only regulate or legalize, but to actually do it in a way that makes sense to the reality it's trying to regulate, the market. How does it actually operate? So I do agree on that one. And that brings me to one of my next points. The Last Prisoner Project, and in general, what is going on right now? Of course, this story with Brittany, being incarcerated in Russia, and not even having to go all the way. The millions of Americans that are still incarcerated, even in states where cannabis has been legalized. What is your view on that? Of this whole scenario and this whole drama going on?
Well, I have a nonprofit that gets people out of prison, so I want Brittany Griner home immediately. It's a difficult situation because the Russian government knows that we've got plenty of people locked up for weed here, and they've got her locked up for weed over there. And so they're going to extract a heavy price for her. I think we should pay that price, probably pay the price to get most of our political prisoners home is what we should do. The United States government generally does not like to negotiate in that manner and make those exchanges. So I worry that it'll be hard for us to get her home, and it could take a number of years to do that. I hope not. There are people locked up in Colombia where you are right now for cannabis, probably a lot of them women. I know in Mexico, 80% or more of the prisoners are women who are basically doing the time for the men because the men are out there, still working or still doing drug trade of one kind or another, and somebody had to do the time, or the family is too poor, or something is going on where you have a lot of these women are locked up for weed in Mexico and Latin America. So we got to get everybody out. I mean, that's the very first. You can't change the law and leave people in prison. That's morally that's an immoral abomination. You just simply
That's kind of
can't do it.
contradiction.
Yeah, you can't do it. It's morally wrong. I mean, you have to have morals to have a free and peaceful society. The rule of law has to, and the rule of law should be driven by what's morally right as much as possible. So, and it's just morally wrong. So we have to. It should not be hard to do that. It wasn't hard to lock people up. It shouldn't be hard to get them out. So, but it is. It is really hard to get them out. So that's that's one thing that we need to do. And then we need to expunge people's records and re-enter them into society, and let them work in the legal cannabis industry, because that's probably what they know how to do, or know at least a little bit what to do. And then not exclude them from that, which a lot of places, if you have a cannabis conviction, they won't let you get a license or work inside a licensed facility, and that's crazy. You're just driving people to do more crime. So that's and it's pretty simple. There's not a lot of gray area here for me anyway, on both a legal and moral scale of things. I've been locked up for weed. My brother's been locked up for weed. Our friends, our family, people we know have been killed even over this. And it's a terrible, terrible, terrible fate. And it's mostly suffered by poor folks, or folks that can't bribe or fight their way. Yeah, can't bribe their way out or fight their way out. And it, depending on what country and society you live in, some countries you bribe yourself. Some country, the form of bribery is just getting a fancy lawyer and having them, go to court for you and win. Pick your poison. That's kind of how it works in the world. So and we just got to get everybody out. We got to get everybody home. We got to get everybody a job that wants one. We got to get the farmers taken care of. We have to, like in Colombia, I think they should license the indigenous farmers, or let them participate without a license. Really, if your cannabis can get through a lab test, you should be able to sell it to anybody. So is the way I kind of feel about it. And there's going to come a point where so many people consume cannabis, you're not going to be able to put every gram through a lab test, or every batch through a lab test. Even you're just going to have to lab test stuff when that goes wrong, like, exactly. Yeah, like now beef is not tested until somebody gets sick with E. coli, and then they do a test, and then they, and then they recall the whole thing, because they have track and trace in place like we do. So that's how it works, and that's how it should work, and that's what I want to see happen.
Thank you. Now, I know you have to leave soon, so I'm just going to ask you one last question.
Okay.
What are your near plans for the future? I mean, what is installed for you in the next, maybe at the end of this year, or in the next one? I mean, what are you working on? Any exciting things you want to talk about?
Oh yeah, everything everything I work on is exciting at this stage of my career. I'm very blessed with that. But Last Prisoner Project is now the largest cannabis social justice organization that I know of, and we continue to get people out of prison. So we're going to keep doing that until everybody's home. But we're building momentum, we're raising more money, and so I spend a lot of time working on that. I'm building dispensaries in Ohio right now. I'm building some in New York. I'm building a patient clinic, I hope soon, in the next 6-12 months in Sweden, actually. And I am building a consumption lounge here in Northern California and working on a few other consumption models with people that haven't figured out where they're going to do it yet, but we're building the model and trying to figure out the best spot to put it. And then I'm starting to get into industrial hemp projects in other countries. So that's just getting started now, and I won't be done with those projects for a year or two, but it takes about a year or two to build any of these businesses. So, and I've only been consulting for about 18 months. So the first ones are just starting to come online. And as they do, people who follow me on social media or LinkedIn or my website, andrewdeangelo.com, you can see everything I'm doing and what I'm up to and what those businesses look and feel like. And I'm super excited about all those projects and my creative projects. I'm developing TV shows and knocking on the door of Hollywood. So far, we haven't been able to get through quite like we did with our reality TV show, Weed Wars, that we did when we had Harborside. But that's another area. And I still write. I have my column with Forbes, and I still write a lot, and I speak as much as I can, like I am with you today. And I'm always passionate and excited to do the storytelling and the communications part of the mission, in addition to the actual operations of Last Prisoner Project and my consulting clients.
Well, it seems like you have plenty on the agenda for now. Do you have any last words for our readers, or maybe anyone who's thinking about being part of the industry?
Well, I think that the industry, what are my last words?
It
I would
sounds a little bit dramatic when I ask it that way.
I would say just come in. I actually made a little video about this that people can watch on my social, but I'm not even sure if I posted it yet because I just shot it. But I want people to learn about prohibition before they come in the industry, so that they understand the impact that this has had on people that don't even look like me, Black and brown people, poor people, women, immigrants. And I want them to know that. I want them to know something about cannabis culture and where we come from, what our music's like, what our festivals are like, what our people are like. And I want people to know what the difference between good cannabis and not so good cannabis is. If you do those three things, then you'll not only have more success in the industry, you'll be more welcomed by everybody that's laid the tracks for this industry for decades and made, in some cases, the ultimate sacrifice for. So that's my hope for people who come in to the industry. That's my advice.